The winemaking has to start in the vineyard.
Less is more. You don't have to manipulate this product. It made itself in the back of some cave 5,000 years ago. It's going to continue to make itself.
Every year, Mother Nature treats the vines and myself differently. And so as we start to see the grapes ripen, and Heather and I go out every 2 or 3 mornings a week and start tasting the grapes, when we start seeing some color development and flavor development, then we start to get really, really excited. The first pruning activities are really to get the vines into balance. So what we're looking for is also the vigor of the vine. If a vine may be a little bit not as buff as some of the other vines, we'll just maybe not leave as many spurs on so that it doesn't have to produce so many grapes. So if it's a stronger vine, we may add a shoot to produce more grapes. So it's a real opportunity to balance the vine each year. The second opportunity that we have to balance the vine is when we do weak shoot removal. So we'll remove any shoots that we really didn't intend to have there when we pruned. And what we want to do is open up the vine as well to get more sunlight into the fruit, because that's what creates the flavor and the color and the clusters, which is a really great thing about these old head prune Zinfandel vines versus growing them on wire. So you open up the vine canopy so more sunlight can get in there, and particularly with Zinfandels, which are probably the most challenging grape to grow in the world because the clusters are so tight, you want to get air in there and sunlight in there to keep them dry, and so that you don't develop what's called summer bunch rot in the Zins. We have this third opportunity, which is when we actually have regular clusters of green berries, but some vines will just have way too many, and they'll never make it all the way to harvest at the same time as the vines that are in balance. So we'll go through and we'll do this green harvest of the grapes, but they look like regular clusters of grapes, and we're going to cut those out, especially if one cluster is laying on top of the other, so that we don't create summer bunch rot, and we can open up the vines and get the vines into balance. About a month to 6 weeks, then we go through and we do veraison thinning. And veraison is when the grapes are going from green to black, and they don't all do that uniformly. What we're trying to achieve is a uniformity of ripeness. So we'll go through about halfway through veraison when we figure we can tolerate the yield loss, and we'll cut out any clusters that are 50% green or more. You go out the next day and suddenly everything looks ripe. And it looks ripe because you've removed those green grapes, which would never be at the same flavor profile or color as the rest of the grapes that ripened earlier. So we go through and we do the veraison thinning. I feel that this is more important than anything we do in the winery to achieve uniformity of ripeness. And it's really important to achieve that really balanced, really world-class wine flavors and textures. During the actual day of harvest, we get a really high-end crew of pickers, because the old head prune Zins in Lodi, for which Lodi is quite famous for, need to be hand harvested. They cannot be machine harvested. So the machines are definitely labor saving, but they pick everything. The great thing about our crew, who has been with us for many years, is that they look at each cluster and are very careful about what they're picking. And of course, the things that we've done earlier in the growing year to achieve a uniformity of ripeness, that's all showing up now. So we're not seeing some grapes that have poor color, or in other words, would have less flavor, less color in the skins. Everything is nice, dark, deep, midnight blue in color. And then it goes on to our sorting table, where the grapes are sorted with our crew of 4 people, and then they go into a destemmer crusher and then into the tanks for fermentation.
So the next step after the primary first fermentation, at least here at the Lucas Winery, is to separate the skins from the wine in red wine. So the sugar's all consumed, and we've actually left it, depending on how it tastes, we've left it for another week or 2 on the skins to soak and get some complexity from the skins before we separate the skins and the juice. And then pressing is that active process in a single day, if you will, of draining off the juice that will come freely, called free run, and then putting the skins that also still have a lot of juice in them, we'll put those skins into the basket press. Our basket presses are little semi-manual basket presses with a center bladder. So what the goal of pressing, of course, is to put some pressure on the skins to make sure that all the juice is removed. Our presses look like an old style basket press, but in the center is a black bladder that we can fill with air, and it pushes against the sides and extracts the juice. The juice comes out the outside of the wooden slats down into a trough and then into a bucket or a stainless steel pan, and then we pump it to the tank where we had already removed the free run. So we combine press and free run all together, and then following that, we will discard the skins into the vineyard and turn them into the soil. So as far as the process goes, once we have pure wine in the tank after pressing, we've got the free run combined with the press wine. It's about 90% free run and about 10% press wine. And we've inoculated for malolactic. It's completed that secondary fermentation. I will add sulfur dioxide, which is our preservative, to clean the wine from any residual bacteria and to just stop everything from happening. At that point, really is a wine. And then it can be brought into the barrel room. And so we literally pump it down here, and we take a whole day to empty the previous vintage, or a couple of days, empty the previous vintage from here, and then take all the barrels outside and wash them, and then return them to this room in the order and the configuration that makes the most sense for the different wines that we're filling. It's usually 2 tiers of Zinfandel and then sometimes a wine club wine. And so David, I basically asked David to be the one to determine which barrels go where, because the brand new barrels and the cooperage that made them in the forest they came from are important, but then the second year barrels also contribute a fair amount of oak to the wine. So we take that into consideration as well. And we do want to differentiate between the 2 styles of Zinfandels. They come from different blocks of grapes between our Zinstar and Citizen. So, they are naturally different wines, but we like to honor that and allow them to be different from each other. And then we just come in and just fill the wines, leave the sediment behind, not introduce too much sediment to these barrels so that they can stay nice and clean from year to year. And based on the 25 to 30% target of new oak, we're using these barrels generally for about 5 to 6 years. And then they'll be sold off to other wine producers or as planters or whatever people find them useful for.
The barrel, each harvest that we use it is kind of like a tea bag. The more you use it, the weaker the contribution of the oak. So eventually it can function as an aging vessel, but it's not going to contribute anything from the forest or from the oak. So this is really, this is where you're really framing the personality of the vineyard. And our wines, we do not want the oak to dominate the vineyard. We really want the oak to work in harmony with the personality of the Zinstar vineyard. Because again, she's so delicate and almost feminine in her personality. It's really easy to overwhelm that with too much oak. Bottling day is a lot of moving parts have to come together. The labels have to come, the glass has to come, the corks have to come, The cases of wine have to come all together at the same time. Today, we have what are called mobile wine lines that can back into the winery, and we hook up the hose to one side of the truck, and the empty glass goes in the other side. And the beauty of it is so clean. The bottling lines, the mobile bottling lines, have really helped us preserve and protect the integrity of the wines.